challenges in life and things become complex, and we usually just help it along a bit. We just make it more complex, is what I've seen along the way. So my talk today is about the KISS principle. Now, everybody knows immediately what that actually might mean. Well, most probably will, okay? But this is keep it simple, spirit-filled. Okay, so, that can only be our aim, because as soon as we actually get involved in all sorts of complex stuff, life becomes far too complex, we become distracted, and a whole lot of other things happen. And usually they're things that we don't want to have happen. So let's just... Pastor Chad actually contacted me and said I could give a 12-minute talk. Now, I was worried about a 12-minute talk because that means that in normal number things you'd round down. I don't like rounding down, I always like to round up. And so I'm figuring that I might have anywhere between 12 and 15. I never know, you never know your luck. I might get chucked off, I don't know. But let's see how we go, okay? So I guess the thoughts are, have we made everything in life too complex? Do we make minor issues of our life the most important things and just make them complex as well? Do we make the big issues of our life the most insignificant? In other words, we actually minimise those things, those more important things. So when we actually think about things in life and what is actually going on in our life, it's funny because Sister Chris just walked in a minute ago and Sue said to her, I think we've taken your seat. I said, bad luck. It's actually like, how important is your seat, really? It's not. And I'm hoping you haven't got a favourite seat that you would actually burst into tears if someone pinched it. That's not what this is about, really, is it? So we want to make sure that is not actually happening for us at any point in our walk. Now, I watched Sue Williams' memorial service yesterday, and I can honestly say you could just play that whole hour and a half, because what an incredible, dazzling event that was. Now, I didn't know Sue really at all, but when you actually look at that, yesterday it said, and it's on YouTube, so you can go and have a look at it, and I would recommend that you do actually do that. It's an example of someone who, through adversity, conquered and knew what they had. Didn't matter what went on, didn't matter all the things that she was going through. Permanent dialysis, world record, 54 years. How can you comprehend that? It's just incomprehensible, whatever that word is. But it was just amazing. And when I saw that and the testimony of the saints around them, around her, and everything that had gone on, it was just fantastic. Her testimony stood strong, and at no point did she have any regrets about the position she was placed in and her life. It's an all-round fabulous story of a saint and the saints and all the support mechanisms that go with it. It was just fantastic. So I guess when we look at something like that, and you can watch that later if you haven't seen it or you weren't there, okay, could we say the same, that if we had the sort of adversity, would we go through the same and actually overcome through that process? Okay, that's our challenge, okay? And I believe she had an incredible vision. She had a vision of the promises given to her by God, and nothing was going to shake her from that. And when we actually know that those promises are for us, then we'll actually grab hold of them as a spirit-filled person and go, nothing's going to waver me. There's a path here. It's straight and narrow, and I'm not diverting no matter what comes against me. So what does that mean for each one of us? We are all so different from different backgrounds and experiences. It's all about keeping our walk simple, sometimes in very complex situations, and ensuring we don't become absorbed by the insignificant, the not important, and the trivial aspects of life. You know the things that I mean. Our view, our habits, our lifestyle, that all becomes really important. Surely I'm going to tell you about that and let you know exactly what I think and what's going on. And in most cases, it's not important at all. Now, there's a story involved in this little process which, for Sue and I and our family, and that's probably going to be my main focus today, is that a story in John 9, so you can turn to John 9 at this point, is about a story that a guy got healed that was blind. Now, when I came to the Lord, of course, that was my greatest wish. My greatest wish ever was our severely disabled son, Ryan, would be healed. And part of that healing would be he would be healed of complete and total blindness. Now, as a parent, you can't imagine how important that might be. You know, that you would have this hope that this would happen. That never ever happened. But I think it actually stood us in good stead for all the adversities of life and all the challenges of life and the things that would come against us. No matter what, we would actually get through particular things that would come against us. And a little thing that's actually come up, and I actually mentioned this at the Vogue camp recently, we have to actually always think that the things that we're actually doing are going to be good. And we'd hopefully pray that we'd actually, all of those things that would go on in our life, no matter all of those challenges, would be good. And so we have this little saying that became EFT, which of course a lot of people might know as electronic funds transfer, okay? But we converted that into, is what I'm saying, where's what I'm doing, edifying, fruitful and truthful. EFT. That is the most important thing. And so we actually have to remember, out of everything that we might have done, that we actually make sure we live by that. Now in John 9, let's go to verse 1. And as Jesus passed by, he said, he saw a man which was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither hath the man sinned nor his parents, but the works of God shall be made manifest in him. So Jesus just explains that this person is blind. All we're going to do here is quite a simple process. He's going to be healed. He's going to see. Now, of course, for someone who is actually a parent of a blind child, you can't imagine how exciting that might be, you know, or for the particular person involved that this actually would be. But of course, there was a question here, and the question was, who hath sinned? Surely someone had. That this would be like this. You know, something bad happened. And I guess as a parent, you think, oh, hopefully that's not the case. Okay, the story was about a healing on the Sabbath day in verse 14. The belief system of the Jews and the impact on thinking that the sin rule and suffering applied. In verse 2, it talked about the fact that whatever happened, even at conception, something had to have gone wrong or something had to have been done wrong because something bad happened and therefore you were under sin. And Jesus was just saying here, that's not the case. I'm going to heal this person, and all we're looking for at the moment is, in verse 3 he said, neither has this man sinned nor the parents, but the works of God shall be made manifest in him. That's all that Jesus wanted to show, is the manifestation of God's great promises would be fulfilled. So in verse 1 to 3, we can see this incredibly little story about this person who's going to be healed. In verse 4 and 5, it talks about Jesus as the light of the world. And he talks about in those verses, in verse 4 and 5, that he was actually going to go. And when he went, we would be the light that would replace him. So we're now shining our light forth. So in this little story about a blind man being healed, and wow, what a natural event that was, that these other little things are actually being portrayed, that he would actually have the situation where in verse 4 and 5, he would say, he was the light of the world and you are going to be the light of the world. You are going to actually be able to show forth the incredible power of God, just as he was displaying in this situation. In verse 6 and 7, he shows it, we'll just read verse 6 and 7. It says, when he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said unto him, Go and wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He sent him by the way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. Now, of course, this man actually need to follow the instruction. That's all he had to do. Jesus actually said, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm sure in a natural sense, I'm not sure too many people would have been that excited about this event, about just getting down in the clay and spitting on it and making some clay and then putting it on his eyes. But he had to go and dip in the pool of Siloam. In Hebrews 11:6 it says, without faith we cannot please God. In James 2:18 it says, yea, a man may say that has faith, but I have works. Show me thy faith by thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that thou hast without faith your works are dead. So from that, and of course there was a story in 2 Kings that talked about the fact that a man was going to be healed from leprosy, and Naaman was told to go and do things. He said, no, I'm not doing that. Forget it. And this blind man here, shows that he actually could do this incredible thing. So verse 8 to 13 talks about the fact that this guy was actually completely healed. Okay? And then they go through a whole lot of discussion about all of that. But all I can think about that is, if I'd come along to this fellowship and my son had been healed and he was a grown person, how exciting would that have been? This would have been amazing, okay? It didn't happen, but here, this person, in a natural sense, it did happen. But there was always, of course, there's always a lot of deliberation, and there's always some opposition. So we have to be aware that there'll be some opposition. In verse 15 onwards, it says, how did he do it? What did you say of him in verse 17? In 19 it says, how does he now see? Of course, we know all these questions could be asked for one reason. I want to know the trick. I want to know the power of God, because knowledge is power. In verse 26 it says, what did he do to you? So he asked this guy, what did he actually do to you to actually heal you? And in verse 40, the Jews asked him, are we blind also? So there's a whole lot of questions that went on, and all the questions that actually were going on at that point. But what an incredible story to actually see that this man was actually healed. And through that story, there were a lot of other events and circumstances that unfolded. Of course, being blind and now seeing was a completely incredible concept in the scriptures, because we talk about this guy being naturally blind and being able to hear, and us being blind spiritually and being able to see spiritually. To us, seeing spiritually is almost way more important than seeing with your natural eyes. It says in Matthew 15:14, let them alone, they be blind leaders of the blind, and if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. In Luke 4:18 it says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach the deliverance of the captives, and recovering of sight of the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. So for all of us in this situation, we can always take the natural and the spiritual. For us, hopefully we can keep it really simple. This guy followed the instructions. I'm going to put mud on your eyes, go and dip in the pool. He did it. Bang. He was healed. For us, spiritually, we pray and hope that is the case for us. Let's just go to Philippians 1. That clock's something wrong with that clock. Clearly. Sue thought it was ridiculous I would even have 2 pages of notes. Of course, they have been a bit of a skim job, but She said it's ridiculous, you just need 1 page, or even half a page will do you. So she seems to know me quite well. Philippians 1, verse 9, and this is where we'll finish. And this I pray, of course we are in a prayer and fast, and this I pray, that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that you may approve things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offence till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God. They are key things for all of us being the light of the world, us knowing what we are and what our situation is in being Spirit-filled Christians. All we need to do is keep it simple, Spirit-filled, and we will be assured of being there at the end. Amen.